What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 403. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron
and John.
Good to see you both. Welcome to the show, everyone. This week is kind of going to be like a leaner episode, I think. We had a big episode last week with our top 10 of 2023. We're going to have a big episode next week with Dune 2, Dune Part 2. So much so that we're getting together on Sunday. A little insider baseball here. We're all getting together at Ronald's house. We're going to watch Dune. We're going to watch Dune on his amazing home theater setup. Just kind of pregame for the screening that we're going to next week for Dune Part 2. And we'll be recording that next week. So this week, we got a required viewing, which has been put off by a little bit. That was my pick for 9 days. Movie from I guess it was 2021. I don't know if it's a 2020. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird things where festival runs were 2020, and I think 2021 is when it actually got like a theatrical sort of quasi release.
Yeah,
we'll get to that in a moment, but then we're gonna just do a bunch of what else we've seen. Just a little chit chatteroo about what we've seen, whether it's television or movies, but just a little catch up. Is there anything else you guys want to mention before we get into required viewing? Any other notes, bits and bobs?
I want to just send all my really. I'm thinking of anyone close to Nick Pizzolatto during this difficult time. Watching him clown himself all over social media when the show that he's presumably still getting paid for, True Detective, is having a fourth season. That whether you love it or don't, sit back, shut up, cash the check, bro. Like, I don't understand the that feels like that's just like uncool to do that kind of thing publicly that he's doing, which is essentially copying and pasting other people's nasty tweets and posts about the new season of True Detective, and then being like, just I'm putting this out here, and then
but in between that happening, so there's season finale that's happening. Then he like issues a sort of statement like, let's get back to the feed about my wife and my brother and my father, whatever he said. It was a very like dismissive, no ownership of what he decided to do. Could have taken the higher road from the jump and just said congratulations. But he chose the wrong path. So there's finale, his actions, his comment on his actions, and then HBO saying, great.
Yeah.
Season 5's coming. Issa Lopez's show running. Strap in,
There's a lot of like dog whistle politics that go on with like the way people talk about movies now. So racists have co-opted the word woke. And now when I hear it really means that you've hired non-white people to be in a thing. And, I've been hearing that a lot around this season. Whenever people feel like there's diversity for the sake of diversity, which isn't a terrible thing, by the way.
Right.
It's woke, which essentially means too many others in it, And so I feel like that's kind of
non-male
or non-straight, non-cisgender, whatever. I mean, it's like,
sure. That's another
of the above, right?
100%. And so that's kind of been the narrative around this show, especially since there's like natives in it. There's like, there's like this whole.
There's literally everything we just said. There's natives, there's women, there's non-white, there's non-binary,
probably. I don't know.
It's probably questionable. But it's there, whether it's just what do you call it? It's confirmed or whatever. Like, it's on the. There's things happening that are just literally check off every possible box that we just said. You know what I mean? And
that doesn't mean it's great. But as to what you guys are talking about with the dog whistle stuff, you can tell the difference between people who are like, I have some problems with the way the story unfolded, or I like this and I didn't like that, and the people who are just like wanting this to seem like it was a failure, wanting this to seem like it was a flop, and I think that's the thing that is, you can catch that little you can hear that little other frequency in there of like, it's like I mean, this we're all over the place on this one, but it's like when people used to talk about Obama and they had some talking point about something they didn't like about Obama, and I was sitting there thinking like, you don't care about tax reform or whatever the thing was. It's
Yeah,
like
Yeah, they saw it somewhere else.
it's
They
like
saw it somewhere on their feed at
but it's
some
like I
point.
know what you're really saying. I know that what
yeah.
you found a little mask to put on this other thing, and I don't know. But I don't think it's fair to say that anybody who didn't like this. It's I'm
Oh
reminded of the
no.
Ghostbusters
Oh no.
2016. I had a couple of friends who just didn't like that, and they kind of whispered it to me. They were like, "I didn't like Lady Ghostbusters, but I don't want to say anything because everybody who's saying they don't like it is a dick." And I think that you
Yeah.
have to be able to keep that space where we can be critical and we can be I don't know, just have a conversation about the quality of a thing, but still even celebrate maybe those aspects of a thing that
Yeah.
we're talking about now, as opposed to whether you loved the story or whether you agree it's the best season or it's the worst or whatever people are saying. It's to the point of Nick Pizzolatto, he's I always knew he was kind of difficult, but I wasn't like rooting against him in this thing. So it's weird that he did like for me his I don't know what his Walker ranking went way down for no real reason, just because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Like he didn't have to weigh in. It's like Terry Gilliam talking about like modern political correctness or whatever and making a fool of himself. It's like
Right.
you didn't have to say any of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This just makes Nick Pizzolatto seem really insecure, which is kind of gross for someone who's had the kind of success he's had.
And it did really well. It's not like the show
It's the
did really
highest. It's
well.
the highest review, best reviewed, and the highest rated
Yeah.
like season.
I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
wherever you fall on the, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like if you look at just stats
Yeah.
for a network or for creators, it's like you can't not call it successful. Like
Right,
it
especially
Yeah.
for
was
Max, which is trying to
greatly
have a hit.
successful.
Like Max
Right.
wants to get
100%.
that prestige sheen back, you know.
Right.
For sure.
And this is the opposite effect of like, say, like another movie. I'm just not going to name anything just to not create any sort of controversy. This is like anything that somebody's pointed to that was too woke, that didn't do well. This is the opposite of that.
Right.
So the logic is so off that like, why don't we welcome more of that then? That means that this next season they may double down. So you might as well just get you're angry on now because it's going to get worse. And
Okay.
it,
Okay.
and
Here's what I
Issa,
predict. Here's what I predict. There's Issa is going to create a character based on Nick Pizzolatto.
Please.
oh, that would be incredible.
It's going to be obvious.
That's gonna be so dope. Oh man. So anyway, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to bring up one tidbit real quick.
Sure.
The Sony Pictures thing. So essentially what's happening is Disney is no longer handling their physical media, and they've kind of assigned that over to uh Sony, which to a lot of people seems like a terrible thing. But Sony Pictures Entertainment is known for making incredible physical media. They really make sure that the sound is good. And there's a term that's kind of come for physical media collectors for Disney, which is like a Disney mix or the Disneyfication of their audio, which means that sometimes you'll go to the movies and hear something and it's not represented quite as well on physical media. And Sony is the opposite. Especially like the Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, they've kind of exceeded some of the theatrical experiences. I mean, one of the bad things that's come out of this is the Disney Movie Club is pretty much going away. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is, it's some of the lesser distributed titles are kind of sold through that. So you may get something that isn't going to show up in a store, showing up in the Disney Movie Club that may come out in very limited quantities. And that doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anymore. So people are kind of worried that physical media is gone the way of the dodo bird, but I think it's being consolidated a little bit. I think that Sony is going to handle this with care, which also means that Sony can also uh, get other smaller labels to kind of put these out as well, which they've been known to do as well. So that may get interesting. You may get like a Arrow Video during the Disney release. That could happen. It's not
Right.
not impossible. But physical media people are we're shaking our fists at the sky, wondering what's going to come
Why?
out. Why? God damn it! Wondering what's going to come out of it. So
Well, I
Right.
mean, every
it'll be
so
interesting.
often it seems like people catch on a little bit more to this idea of why physical media might be important.
Right.
So it's like every round, I feel like I hear. It's funny to hear like the same. Oh, they're making less of this, or this store is closing, or where are people getting it, or whatever.
Mhm.
And then you hear also about people complaining about all these series being taken off the streaming services that own
Mhm.
them. Like even when it's like a
Right.
Netflix show and it's the possibility of not being able to get a Netflix show on Netflix, and it's like, well, then what's the whole physical media thing? I don't know. I think it's an interesting. We're at an interesting moment that feels
We
like it
are.
could be a pivot point, and I worry that what we're pivoting towards is just less access to things and not assuming you're going to have permanent access to things just
For
because they
sure.
exist, which for the
Yeah.
longest time has been the case for just about
Yeah.
anything. Is like it's going to have some kind of home where you can just find it and watch it.
Yeah.
And maybe things are going to seem more precious, and maybe that will increase the demand then for more physical media. Because now people don't even have players, or a lot of people don't have like the right setup to even play stuff.
Yeah.
So
It'll be interesting for sure.
one
Well,
thing's
I'll
for
be
sure,
collective.
it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, and I will have some of those things in my house.
Yes.
Yeah, some of them at least.
Very cool.
Well, Steve,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna. We were segueing, I think, in the right direction.
There we go.
But yes, why don't you take us into required viewing for this week? It's your pick.
Yeah, so again, this is a movie called 9 Days. This is a movie that kind of was on the festival circuit in 2020. I'm pretty sure the theatrical piece of it was in 2021. But I just remember kind of hearing a lot of great stuff about this during the beginning, or the pandemic of all the festivals. There was opportunities to watch stuff virtually, which we were able to take advantage of over the years. But I don't know, I just remember this having a place in my mind. A lot of critics that I kind of follow, whether it's on Twitter or eventually TikTok, people that I just kind of keep in touch with, um, a lot of them had been mentioning this movie, and seeing it on a lot of end of year lists in 2021 from certain critics and websites and trades that I, keep up with just for end of year lists in general, to kind of make sure I'm not missing movies, that I've never heard of. But it was cool to see this kind of come back up after hearing good stuff and having no way to watch it because it just wasn't available for such a long time. But it just kind of hit my radar again, like I said a couple episodes ago, mainly because of the cast, like, these mainly Winston Duke, who I love and I feel like you don't see enough of. And he's coming out and he's going to be in that Ryan Gosling film later this year, or this spring, I guess, summer, with Emily Blunt, called The Fall Guy. I saw him pop up in the trailer. I'm not sure how big his role is in that movie, but I just would love to see more of him. But also Benedict Wong, Tony Hale, Bill Skarsgård, Zazie Beetz, and recently, just from the most recent season of Fargo, David Rysdale is in it as well. I know
Hmm.
John probably appreciated that.
Yeah, it's cool to see him. I mean,
Wayne,
I didn't know if I'd seen him
yeah.
anywhere else before or if I should have. And then when I saw him, I was like, oh yeah, he did do something.
But yeah, so it's just something that I knew was available finally, pretty wide, and just I was like, yeah, it's a good opportunity. As I go down my list of things I've missed
Right.
over recent past, it's just like I gotta catch up with this now. So yeah, I don't know. What did you guys? Did you have any awareness of it? Well, and we can kind of get into what you guys thought of it too. Either.
John, you go first.
Honestly, I I know that I had heard something about it, and I knew because I knew something about the concept,
Yeah.
but I feel like it had blended with a couple of other things in my mind, and I think that happens sometimes, with this kind of ensemble cast, especially when it's this kind of or indies level ensemble where it's like a couple of names that are sort of big and a couple of people
Sure.
that because you know them from different projects. So I think that was my awareness of it, and it had just kind of completely like it wasn't on my it wasn't on my radar at all. So, but when you brought it up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that that movie existing. I remember hearing somebody talking about it. So, and it's kind of an interesting concept. You set it up last time. It's sort of magical realism, sci-fi, almost kind of. I mean, I don't know what genre you would put it in. It reminded me of that movie. in a way. What Dreams May Come, is that the name of that movie, the Robin
Yeah.
Williams movie?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
any movie that has like a metaphysical sort of almost allegorical approach to depicting some kind of life after life scenario, but this idea of souls that have not been through the experience of a human life yet, um, auditioning essentially for a spot to exist, and then like being wiped out of existence if they don't pass that audition. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like there's different versions of things that are adjacent to that we've seen. So in some way, I feel like it does slot into a kind of um, category, but it's still a very unusual movie. And I think that, you know, the most noteworthy things about it, I mean, you kind of already mentioned the cast, and I think the overall the look and feel and mood of it, you know, it may have gotten a bit repetitive for me by the time it was done, but I did appreciate the sort of um I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of classy production value. Like it was just a well-made thing. And I think that you know, all those actors that you mentioned are people that, you know, can be really good. Like Tony Hale is somebody who, whenever I see him in something, especially something a little more dramatic, I'm kind of impressed at just
Right.
how much you realize that Buster Bluth was a performance, you know, and his role on Veep was a performance. But also it's interesting seeing Winston Duke, you know, carry a film. How do you think he did, Ronald, as a lead of a movie?
I think he did great. Um, I'm always conflicted with these sorts of movies because they're heavy, and I feel like as a person that consumes a massive amount of like smaller stuff, I'm always feeling weird when stuff like this rises to the top because there's like 80 movies that have existed like this in the past 20 years that people just don't talk about. And then this is the one that people choose. It's accessible, it's easy to kind of pitch to somebody. So I'm always conflicted about movies like this. 'Cause I gotta be honest. So it's like entry level indie stuff, but it's
What you mean in
incredible.
terms of the cast and the production
It's
value,
it's
or in terms of
yeah,
the kind of
it's
story that it
yeah,
is?
it the type of story it is
Yeah,
is easy entry level sort of stuff. I don't mean in terms of complication of story. I just mean like in terms of the scope of the story. I could, you know, there's a lot of movies that kind of take on this sort of, you know, existential stuff and oh, what would your life be like? And here's this dead person, or here's this alive person, or here's this. There's a lot of movies like this.
I love your
Uh
explanations.
there's like Soul. I mean, like, can I give you Soul? Can I give
No,
you? I
you're
mean,
right.
there's
No,
like,
that's what I
yeah,
was trying to talk about
there's
too. Yeah,
80
like
movies like this.
right.
I'm just saying there's 80 movies like this. And this is the issue I have with that again is I champion a lot of movies and they just nobody gives a fuck about these movies, but people are raving about this like it's hard to describe, man.
Are
But
people
like
raving?
in a very small echo chamber. Like I feel
Yeah,
like nobody
Yeah,
knows this movie exists.
yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
like my reason to select it, because like even
Mhm.
though I was aware of it and it did pop up on some end of year lists and things like that once it actually came out,
Yeah.
it's, you know, 9 out of 10 people I've asked about this, friends, family, no clue what it is.
right.
Yeah.
You know, no registration of what it, and then you're like, oh, this is in it. Though you start, like you said, naming the people, and you're like, oh wow, that's like people I
Yeah.
know. Like I recognize those names. How have I not heard of it? Because it like literally came out and went nowhere and went away real quick.
That's my
Um,
grumpy. That was my grumpy part. But
That's your
I will
grumpy.
say I got my grumpy part out because I needed to get that off my chest. Because there was like a moment, I don't know if on Twitter, on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok a little bit, there was like a period where I was seeing this movie quite a bit. And
oh
that's
really?
like, yeah, it's like it's like the internet verse knows, you know, they like quote
Yeah.
things from it and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
show us the end scene and all that. I got that part up. But in general, in terms of this just being a movie, good God, man. What an incredible study of the human condition and um Winston Duke and character's name is Will, right? Or
Yeah.
He's Will. Yeah, he's Will.
Will and Kyle and the dynamic that existed in this world and you know just
Kaio's
kind of
played by Benedict Wong. We should
yeah,
mention
Benedict Wong was
who might be my
incredible.
favorite person in the movie. Like
Yeah.
I thought he underplayed. Like I feel like he hit the right pitch for me of making this the world building stuff they had to do. It felt very natural coming out of him. He was really conversational. Winston Duke
Yeah,
was a bit more theatrical. I mean, again, his character has more of an
100%.
emotional arc, but
Yeah.
I thought that Benedict Wong was like really naturalistic and warm and really helped me sort of buy into these as characters and not just as like symbols.
Even knowing what the movie was about. Nobody told me what the movie was about. I knew what it was about within 15 minutes or so of watching it
Yeah.
and how it was going to end. I still cried my ass off.
Oh, it made you cry. Okay.
Yeah,
I kept waiting
yeah, I
for
was
that.
there.
See, I kept
Yeah.
waiting for it to hit me like that, and I think that's why I felt
Hit
a little
me.
bit like this movie. You know, when you can tell a movie's supposed to be doing that and it's
Mm-hmm.
not, you're like, well, is it me or the movie? You know, but I'm glad to
That's
hear
not
that.
true.
Okay, it's not
It's
me.
not, but I
It's
did cry. I cried
sometimes it
though.
doesn't work out between you and a movie. You know.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
also like my daughter's birthday's tomorrow. So I'm like, I've
Yeah.
been real like
Awesome.
anyway. But yeah, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, especially um I don't know, man. I as grumpy as I can be about movies, I'm pretty like optimistic about a lot of things, you know.
Hmm.
Just talk, just look at our conversations about trying to get movies that we want to get that we don't have access to. I'm always like, we can do it. We can get it. We can get
Right.
it. These people will talk to us. But the optimism is what keeps life kind of feeling amazing, you know? So
Hmm.
seeing
Mhm.
Zazie Beetz' character kind of come in and the like impact that she has on everybody she's around just warmed my heart, man. And I just knew it was coming, and I could see in her challenging everything in every scene. I knew it was coming. It still got to me. And there's something about just people like that in the world that just, we need people like that. Um, I knew I was being manipulated, and I still fell for it. Played me.
I didn't really feel as manipulated. Like I felt like I think that's really what worked so well for me. And I like yeah, in the end, I thought this movie was great. I
Mm,
definitely was pretty emotional towards the end of it, and even earlier scenes in the movie. I feel like uh I think it's like very deliberate and kind of like the people that he or these souls that he's interviewing. And again, just to recap, he's interviewing these souls to decide. He's picking one basically replace a person who is living who died, like one
mm,
of his selections that he's made as this in
yeah,
this role.
Kind of his
His
favorite.
favorite
Yeah.
his
yeah.
favorite selection has died suddenly, and the
Recently got
reason
into
that she dies is kind of like earth shattering to him. And
mm,
when he realizes that or comes to that realization, so he's kind of interviewing these souls to decide who will be born and have a chance to replace that life, um, on Earth or whatever. But I just felt like the way the interviews were going and kind of showing the different levels of whether it was optimism or a little more like guarded about things, or like the self-consciousness that one of them kind of had. I just felt like the way it kind of touches on all these elements of like kind of what makes us us, or the different flavors of what can make us us. I thought was like really well handled, and I think through the course of those interviews, and especially with Emma's character, who couldn't be less interested in being selected. I
Hmm.
feel like
yeah,
that's the piece of her performance especially that really stood out to me, because I think it's something that maybe is something that maybe he hasn't encountered in his experience doing this,
Right.
especially like his unique situation where he was a soul that was chosen to live, and now he's in this experience where like where Kaio Benedict Wong's character like never lived. He's always been just in this soul realm or state. I just like that logic of it all just really kind of I think had a pretty big impact on me of like you know Will's demeanor and kind of how he is challenged by Emma, and like her her interviews, and like the way she kind of handles a lot of the questions. And even not to get any spoilers, but like just towards the end of the film, there's certain decisions and certain comments and things that happen that, but specifically between the two of them, that I think just really have a huge impact on Will, which is you see in the film pretty clearly. But I just thought that all worked really well for me. And again, the performances I think are great, but Winston and Zazie are like just I thought were great in the movie together, in the scenes that they shared, especially. But I thought the movie like played pretty quickly. Like it could be taken as heavy, and yeah, you're right. It kind of it's got a vibe of what dreams may come. Soul is obviously like a direct correlation. I was also feeling a bit of like Eternal Sunshine, a bit
Mhm.
like in terms of like the value of the here and now and doing things over and things like that.
And the
Yeah.
kind of representation too of like memory as
Yeah,
like as this kind of degraded
yeah,
videotape kind of thing that might
yeah,
even be like shifting. I mean, this movie doesn't touch on that, the idea that it may change as you come back to it, but that idea that it is sort of an imperfect record, even though you're seeing from the point of view of the person,
right,
you're
right,
seeing
right, right.
everything. And that mixture of like low tech and high tech does remind me of because we just watched Eternal Sunshine. My wife and I watched it with Henry, my wife, my family, Nikki and I watched it with Henry, and
My
and
wife.
my wife,
Sorry.
and it was the first time I'd seen that in a while, and I had sort of forgotten how much that movie does get into the sort of the technology behind what you're doing, and
Right,
him
right.
sitting there at the bank of televisions did kind of remind me of Mark Ruffalo at the computer, looking in the Jim Carrey's memories in that. So again,
Yeah.
it does fit into a lot of things. I feel like, yeah, it didn't work for me emotionally as much, but I do think the concept was kind of interesting. And I think what you guys have said about the way that it like there is that moment where you realize like, okay, if we think of this as an allegory, or if we think of this in a relatable way, this idea of like being the right soul for the right like slot that's open,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like what like in this case like how you're earning that slot, and so you have to kind of extrapolate like, okay, therefore if you're not being chosen, then you're showing some trait that would make you less suited for the world or less suited to replace this particular person. And it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing. I mean, it doesn't really bear out with the way we view reality, but that idea of what's your value and what do you bring and what quality might someone see in you that would make them think this person needs to exist in the world, Um, it's interesting because of like Zazie Beetz' character. It's like her not being interested doesn't take her out of the running. In fact, it puts her more in the running.
Right, right.
It's kind of that thing of like the person you really want to be president is the person who doesn't want the job, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
once you want it, then suddenly you've got these other qualities or other traits that are not the qualities that might make you right for it. So I think it's interesting the if you think about why she was special and also why, and I think we do spoil in this section, but I won't say too much. But I think why she might not, the plot might not go the way that you would think it would go around her, despite her being, like you've said, Ronald, kind of a positive force in the story. I think that there is something kind of interesting about you can take apart the reasons behind it, I guess is what I'm saying. It's a little bit of a philosophical question that the movie leaves you with, because it's not like he doesn't explicitly state to everybody who disappears and who doesn't make the cut. Like we don't really find out what their crime was or what their quality was. We can kind of see them though and intuit what it was. Like, oh, this character is a little uh doesn't care about other people's suffering as enough. Oh, this character doesn't have enough confidence, whatever. There's those are things that don't make you bad. They just might make you less right for this assignment of being on Earth. And that's where it
Sure.
does make me feel like it's a Pixar thing of like the end goal is to to win the existence on Earth that we all know is so grand. But I don't know, even in the movie it's interesting that the people don't seem to be having great lives or anything, the people that he's chosen. Um so I don't know, it can't help but make you think about stuff, and it is nice to see a movie like this that isn't like connected to a particular faith as well. I would say that's
Yeah.
another thing I think that might make it, for some people might make it feel sort of soft, but I think it's cool that it exists in that kind of philosophical thought experiment way. And it's really developed. It reminds me almost of like an episode of an anthology show,
Mm.
where they take a concept and turn it
Yeah.
into a whole world.
The one little like nugget about the movie that I loved was like when he goes through his selection process, like even if they're not selected, I like that, he tried to basically recreate like some sort of life event that they would have
Yeah.
wanted to
Oh.
experience,
Yeah,
before they disappear forever.
right.
Like that idea of like you didn't make the cut, but here's a taste of what could have been,
Yeah.
and whatever comes will come. I don't know, like that was it's so sad, but it was also like so I don't know, like I don't know. merciful or something. I don't know. It's just like
well, you feel like
it
that's
got me.
part of the system, and then you
Yeah,
find
yeah.
out, or at least my impression was it's something he does,
Yes.
and I thought that was really interesting. It's like,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's because he had it, like
yeah,
he
right,
he
right.
was there and Kaio was never there.
So
So I don't know.
where does Kaio, like, why do some souls get to stick around and work in this? I mean, did we find that out? I wondered if I missed a line that explained
No,
why he and Kaio didn't get dispersed into nothingness, why they got the sort of positions that they got.
I don't think that's like ever kind of clarified or
Okay,
really kind of ironed out.
all
No,
right. I
it's just
worried
like
that I
this
missed a
is
line or something.
no. I think it's like this is just what it is.
Yeah, which
But
is
I
fine.
dug that piece of it though.
Well, with him, it
I
makes
mean,
sense. Like it makes sense if you'd lived a life and then ended up back there, that maybe you would have a different status. But with Kaio, it wasn't clear to me if we knew why he didn't get, like, is it maybe that if you like, maybe you don't all not all souls have to try out for this placement. You only you only get dispersed into nothingness if you try out and fail. Because it did seem like there was that other person who kind of worked for
yeah.
the organization or the system or whatever you want to call it, that popped by. But anyway, um and it's out there. I didn't even one thing I would say about this movie that I thought was very odd. Did you notice there were like 12 minutes of credits?
No.
No, I didn't watch
It
them
was
all.
like 2 hours and 4 minutes long, and it ends at an hour and 52 minutes. And I was
Oh,
shocked that there's like 12 minutes of credits on there.
damn.
Hmm. I
That's
didn't see
wow.
that.
That's a lot of credits.
That's my point.
Was it crowdfunded? I mean, was it
You
one of
know,
those things?
I did not notice, because
Like,
I didn't just watch them. I just noticed it's like, oh wow, that's all credits that's left.
So yeah, 9 days. I would definitely recommend it to check out. I mean, again, it's like one of these little things. I was a little confused where you were going when you started, Ronald, about like the indie. Like, why is this one rising? Because I was like, it's not. Like, I feel like it needs more. Like,
yeah.
there's other indies that I think have
I just heard
found
about it
larger
a lot.
audiences. I'm
Maybe
like,
it's
well,
just
how
because of
did
the
that find an
movie group.
audience?
Maybe it's just because
Yeah,
of like
we also
yeah,
have like we're in our little bubble of
yeah. It's
like
a little
we
bubble,
see a
man.
lot of stuff
Oh yeah,
most people never knew existed. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm glad I finally got to check it out. I
Me
definitely,
too.
and I feel like in general it was like a movie that kind of, even though I got emotional watching it, like made me feel good. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
it made me feel good about like life. Like you're saying, think about your daughter's birthday, like little things of like these trips that we take around the sun every year. It's just like
Mhm.
sure.
these things that we need to appreciate and like understand that in some way, shape, or form in the scope of this film, like we're a soul that got selected. I don't know.
Right,
That it
Yeah,
kind
right,
of was
right.
like
No,
blowing my mind a little bit.
I guess that's kind of what I was getting at too, is that like the idea that what we experience as just a everyday moment, someone who's never experienced life might look at it on a little screen and go, "Oh my God, that looks cool." Riding a bike down the street,
Absolutely.
"Oh my God, that looks amazing." Walking on the
yeah.
beach, that looks amazing,
Like, yeah, dude. So
So
true.
it's
So
like, and it
true.
is true that, like, I mean, it's not, and hey, don't take things for granted. I mean, it's not a lesson that we haven't thought about, but still, when that, yeah, okay. Well, you guys are going to get me more emotional than the movie did.
I was just
Yeah,
talking about those
Yeah,
things.
right.
They just
yeah.
put them in our day to day. It's
Yeah,
like, oh
right.
man, this
Yeah.
fucking makes me upset.
Oh my God, the three of us are on three little screens.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Imagine Winston
Oh,
Duke sitting in
If
a
you're
dark
following,
house
if maybe
watching
he's
us.
watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder
So
who's his
who's next?
favorite.
Who's next for required viewing?
I am next in the rotation.
Let's
And
do it.
a funny thing happened on the way to required viewing this time, because I had selected a movie that was just next because I thought it'd be a fun one to pick, because it was one that I had always heard, I thought, positive things about. Um, and it was a hole in a certain director's career that I hadn't seen, and it had actors that I love in it. So I was like, why not? Why not check it out? And then very recently, this movie was in the news because one of the actors in this movie said it's not a good movie. And then it kicked off this online debate about whether Red Eye is a good movie or not. Uh, it's not a movie I've seen, but I love Rachel McAdams and I love
Oh my
Cillian Murphy.
God. Let's go.
And I tend to love Wes Craven, so
You're
I'm
gonna
gonna find
love
out
Red Eye.
which side of the debate I fall on with Red Eye. A
I
movie,
don't
like I
bet
said, that,
money, but
okay,
I'm
well,
betting that you're gonna like it,
This
John.
is crazy that
but
you
you heard
bring this.
did you see where Cillian Murphy though said it wasn't a very good, like, he did that thing that a lot of actors do that always
Yeah.
kind of lets me down, where they'll say, "Oh, I thought of that as kind of a B movie," and it's like you
Yeah.
go, "Oh shit, I thought it was cool that you were in a B movie." But now I understand that, because you work with Christopher Nolan, you guys sit around and, I don't know, sip tea and and talk about B movies. But no, I think that there is something that maybe it doesn't matter what an actor thinks if they were good in a movie or not. So that doesn't
Mm,
mean I'm going to walk into it thinking, well, this can't be good if the actor doesn't think it's good. But that does sort of disappoint me. It's similar to the Nick Pizzolatto thing of just like, you're not supposed to say that, Cillian Murphy.
right, right, right.
That's a Wes Craven movie, but he was complimentary towards Rachel McAdams. But what was interesting was just seeing like all the people that then said, I can't believe there's any debate about this. And they were either really pro or really against. And I had never
Wow.
really seen people being really against that movie before this recent wave. And this wasn't like the online Twitter stuff. This was sort of people I know that it came up, and I don't know. So I'm interested, I was interested to watch it before. It was the next on the list, but now it's slightly more topical.
Mm.
Love it. Love the pick. Fan of the film. Can't wait to watch it again.
We just had an intense conversation about this in the James household.
Ooh.
This trailer fucked my wife up. Like she doesn't watch things with Cillian Murphy and was very hesitant to see Oppenheimer because of this. Do you remember the campaign? Of course, Steve, you remember. Do you remember it was like a rom-com trailer? And then the very first trailer goes to them sitting in the chair, and then it gets very dark and focuses on Killian's eye in red. And then every other trailer was like a normal trailer, but that particular one is burned into my soul. And Erin, she was affected by it in a very different way. She didn't really watch anything with Cillian Murphy literally after seeing that trailer. She never sought anything out with him.
That's good.
She saw Batman Begins. Yeah, it's great.
But also just everybody, since we are also talking about 2 Dune movies next week, I did you guys a favor. This movie is a brisk like 86 minutes long.
Okay,
so,
cool.
It's
not too much homework.
Cool, man. It looks like it's on. Fubo TV if you have that. It's also on Paramount Plus to stream.
Okay.
And then every platform to rent or buy. You can buy it for $4.99 on Amazon in 4K right now digitally. If you want.
Was just remastered, like literally just came out.
Nice,
very exciting. Thank you, man.
Yeah, I'm yeah, I like the pick again. I go into this saying I remember really liking Red Eye, and I haven't seen it, but yeah, awesome cast, and I feel like once, that cut in the trailer you're referring to, like that's really like that is how the movie plays. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like the marketing for it really is the movie. And I think that's kind of what was kind of genius about some of the marketing. But I'm excited, man. I love Rachel McAdams.
Well, we love when they sell us the movie that we actually get, Steve. That's one of those things that we're fans of on this show.
Right. I mean, more severely, the movie, you can feel it like change gears.
Oh, like
literally, like it like what Ronald said. Like, I'm not trying to spoil the movie. You watch the trailer, it's like,
oh yeah, I mean, I know enough about
the
it.
first 10 minutes of the movie, you're like, oh, this is like a sweet rom-com. The 10 minutes of an 84-minute movie, like you said, and then it's like they get on the plane and like, oh, this is not a rom-com. And it's a ride, man. It's I love that movie. It's so fun. Again, Paramount Plus if you want to watch along with us for next week.
Very cool.
All right. So what else have you guys watched? Anything exciting? Wow, that sounds good.
Well, I mean, I mean, I was going to let someone go before I went with mine, but I could go. I saw Drive-Away Dolls, the Ethan Coen film, the solo film. And I think that you can look at Joel Coen's Macbeth and then look at Ethan Coen's Drive-Away Dolls, and you can see what they add to each other's aesthetic so much. And I don't even mean that to be too much of a slam. Drive-Away Dolls is a goofy, silly, funny, it's another, I mean, maybe 80-something minute long thing with exaggerated characters. And it actually feels kind of it almost leans more into like B-movie exploitation film kind of vibe. It's more raunchy and it tries to be a little different for something they would do, but it does feel like it does remind you at times of the Coen brothers kind of style of humor, but it doesn't have the visual style that you can see all over Macbeth. And not that there's a lot of reason to cram Coen Brothers jokes into Macbeth, but I mean that movie was perhaps lacking a little bit of the liveliness and character that I was just describing, that you expect from a Coen Brothers movie. So I feel like overall, I don't know how successful this movie was for me. I have seen a lot of people online reacting to the sort of positive and sort of unexpected queer representation that's in this film. There's a lot more. It's just a lot more focused on the two lead characters are lesbians and they're very frank, and it's a very raunchy, sexually explicit sort of movie in terms of the dialogue and the humor in it. And it's co-written by Ethan Cohen's wife, Trisha Cook, who's also an editor that they've worked with for years.
Wow.
So it's like it has a little bit of a different aesthetic. You can feel that kind of Coen Brothers aesthetic. So I'm not going to try to judge it based on, oh, it doesn't feel like a Coen Brothers movie. But that is kind of what I'm doing in the back of my mind, is thinking like, I wish this had a little bit more visual style and panache to it. However, the subject matter kind of leans into the sort of sillier tone and less self-serious tone. So I think some people might have a lot of fun with this movie, and other people I think are going to find the characters kind of flimsy and grating, and not too different from the way, say, like a real stylized performance like Jennifer Jason Leigh's performance in The Hudsucker Proxy. She does that kind of mid-Atlantic accent. Um, what's her name? Qualley, is it?
Margaret.
Margaret Qualley. She's doing a very stylized Texas accent in this that I don't know if it's based on any actual Texan, but it's very stylized and it's very movie, and it's even kind of Coen-y, and it never quite clicked for me. And I think that kept me at arm's length from the movie at different points, but I did still find bits and pieces of it amusing. And like I said, if you're kind of starved for that Coen-y flavor and that kind of back and forth dialogue, this movie does have traces of it. It's just not as refined. And I don't think it's trying to be the same thing as a Coen Brothers movie, but you can't help but wish, if it could feel a little tighter and a little more focused, it would scratch that itch. But I think, like I said, I think a lot of people are going to have fun with this one. This is a movie that really doesn't expect you to take it seriously almost from the first frame, and so you almost can't be too hard on a movie like that.
Cool.
So yes, my short review is should be more like Macbeth.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
I
the pool quote. Go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
that's cool. So there was a movie that I've been trying to watch for the last like year, and I've stopped it like 10 times, but I gave it a chance very recently and wound up loving it. It's a South Korean movie called Alienoid. The basic premise is uh there's an alien race that basically ran out of space in space, and then decides to use human bodies as prisoners for these criminals that exist on their planet. So every couple people has a prisoner inside their body, and they don't know it. They don't have memories of it. They don't have anything, but they occupy their body. Sometimes they get out, and there happens to be one that's very dangerous that gets out. And it's a mission of these two androids to kind of get that prisoner back into a body. It's a really weird premise, and it works
cool,
somehow. It's really visually stunning. And it is some of the best sound that I've ever heard, but it's a really cool, easy to follow sort of premise. It's why I kind of introduce South Korean movies in my life every couple months. Like I always find something new that I've never seen before. It's on Tubi right now. One of the characters is in what's her name? Kim Ray Lee. Is actually her debut movie was The Handmaiden, which was Park Chan-wook's first American film. Really, really good actress. You've probably seen her before in other stuff, but this is, it's crazy. Like Handmaiden was her breakout movie, first movie she's ever been in. And then to see her in this movie, like a couple years later, it's really cool. There's a second movie coming out, and I think that's why I decided to watch it. Alienoid 2 is actually in theaters right now. but you can see the first one on Tubi right now. It's fun. It's easy to follow. It's not too violent either. Like I feel like you could bring like a young kid in it and he'd be like, oh, an alien's taking over this person's body, and it wouldn't be too bad. There's a little bit of death in the beginning. Um, but it's a fun film. I don't know why, like it sounds like it shouldn't have worked and somehow it worked. And I kind of want to watch it again. I really enjoyed it. But Alienoid, available on Tubi for free.
Steve, got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to mention two movies. The first is a animated film on Netflix that is
Ooh,
actually written by Charlie Kaufman
Mm.
called Orion and the Dark.
okay.
That I watched with my kids, or with Sydney specifically, this past weekend. And she's probably watched it 3 times since then herself. But this is just basically a story about a kid with like a wild imagination, constantly goes the worst case scenario, but the thing he fears the most is nighttime or the dark. And he's kind of visited by a quote unquote monster giant, like a personification of dark in the form and
Oh,
voiced
wow.
by Paul Walter Hauser.
That's right.
Jacob Tremblay is the voice of Orion. It's also got like Angela Bassett, Colin Hanks, Nat Faxon, Ike Barinholtz, Carla Gugino. Awesome cast. Like just all these names pop up all
Yeah,
throughout it.
Rob Delaney.
Yeah, Rob Delaney,
Werner
Natasha
Herzog.
Demetrio from What We Do in the Shadows.
Mhm.
Nastia is in it. But yeah, it's just like it's a really good looking animated film. Like I like the animation style, and it was really cool. And like kind of again, it's kind of got that thing where like Inside Out did for like all the feelings and emotions. It's like kind of doing these figures that are kind of representing the dark and dreams and um insomnia and like all these things that kind of make the nighttime go forward, in terms of how people sleep or don't sleep or what they do while they're sleeping. It's just kind of really cool ideas, especially like kids trying to navigate just getting to a point where you're comfortable enough to go to sleep. And he kind of goes on this adventure with the dark character in this world where you kind of see the balance between day and night and all these things. But the voice talent's great. It was really cool to see or to hear Paul Walter Hauser. I love him, and I think his voice work for Dark was really fun. And um, yeah, I was like surprised when I saw the Charlie Kaufman pop up on when the credits started rolling. But the guy who directed it really, I think what's his name, Sean Sharmatzi. I think he did some of the Trolls movies or has some involvement in the Trolls movies. But I thought it was really fun. Like it was, and it's got that kind of emotional ending that it's like, oh my god, like it's literally. I feel like I said that out loud as I was watching it, and it does this really kind of fun thing where like the movie is starting as this story of Orion, this kid, and as we're watching the story breaks, and it's the adult Orion telling the story to his daughter who's going through the same thing. And there's these layers on the movie as our narrator is the kid that we're watching, um, and kind of how his journey as a child is being told to his daughter, and she kind of has her own involvement in that journey. Gets a little kind of like sci-fi heady at times, but in a fun way. Um, but yeah, anytime like kids get older and you see the connections between them and their parents, stuff like that, it's like we talked about it earlier. It's just like it's instant mush for me,
Right.
especially if it works with the characters. But it was a cute, fun movie on Netflix right now. It's called Orion in the Dark. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's a really great action movie in theaters right now, directed by William Eubank, who is one of these filmmakers I feel like is slowly becoming like there's a crop of filmmakers that I feel like their names have been consistent over the past 2, 3, 4 years that are like the names I just look for. And he's one of them. He did The Signal years ago. He did Underwater a couple years back with Kristen Stewart. He had the what he did some on one other film, but this is called Land of Bad. It's in theaters right now. Liam Hemsworth is like the star of the movie, but
Mhm.
Russell Crowe is also in it. Luke Hemsworth is in it. Milo Ventimiglia is in it from like This Is Us and Young Rocky at some point. People maybe know him as, but it's basically like a special ops gone bad action
Mm.
movie over the course of like 48 hours, and it mixes this element of like the military ops stuff, which I'm not really in the bag for normally for those kinds of movies, especially just like the military period. But I just feel like I kind of get burned out on those, and they
Yeah.
all feel like they do the same thing. But the wrinkle in this is that like
Mm.
there's this juxtaposition of the character that Liam Hemsworth's playing. He's along for this ride because he's a JTAC specialist, so he's in communication with the people that like are manning and coordinating drones. So
Oh
like
wow.
there's these boots on the ground soldiers who are like hardened Marines, and then there's this JTAC agent who's with them, who's also a soldier, but it's like what's the combination of what they can accomplish with these old school military tactics and new technology where they exceed in some ways and falter in the others. But all in all, it's just a really kind of it's a super solid action movie, like one of the better action movies. It's not John Wick type of
Oh
action movie that
wow.
I've seen recently. So I don't know what the plan is, if it's going to be in theaters for a while or if it's got a VOD window yet. Um, but yeah, this dude made a great film a couple years ago called Underwater with Kristen Stewart, which we talked about on the
Yeah.
podcast, which was
I loved it.
amazing. And I thought this was great. Like this completely took me by surprise. Russell Crowe is great in it. He's the guy operating the drone in the film. So this is like kind of old cranky Russell Crowe sitting in an office, kind of coordinating what's going on. And I love it. Does that thing that Hurt Locker did a little bit, where like you'll see like how scary what's happening on the mission on the ground is, and you cut to like these officers, these agents in a air hangar in Reno, Nevada, or Las Vegas, Nevada, like going to a snack machine with a headset on, like manning a drone that's dropping bombs that are wiping off. Like it's just it's visually, it's like and they do some really cool stuff with cutting between that stuff, like when time is of essence,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the hand to hand like gun scenes and the attack scenes. I was just like, I popped it on, Saturday night, and I was like, Aaron went out to dinner with her friends. I was like, I might go check this out, and I was like, wow, I'm really way more into this than I thought I was going to be, and you know, crowd was into it. It just, I don't know, it played really well, and I was
Yeah.
surprised how much I liked it. But yeah, it's called Land of Bad. Again, it's in theaters now, and I don't think it's a wide release, but it's got some sort of limited release, and I think it's got a VOD thing coming soon. I don't know if you have anybody check that out as I was speaking, but I have a feeling it's kind of one of those deals where it's out for a couple weeks and then it'll be available at home. But again, Land of Bad, not a great title, but a really really good action movie though.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out.
What else? What else?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm good too. Huh?
I wanted to ask you guys: did either of you finish or watch all of Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
Not yet.
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
well let's wait. Let John finish it, then we can kind of
Okay,
circle back.
cool.
Yeah, we need to do a TV roundup at some point, or
Yeah,
whatever
we can hold that then. Yeah, because
a
I
streaming
feel
series roundup.
I hadn't even started it over the last like 4 days. I went through the whole season, so
We're due to do the same thing soon.
we should add that to the list. And when you get through it, John, we should definitely chit chat about it. I just checked. So Land of Bad, if you're interested, actually it's coming on streaming on March 19th.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
it'll have like I guess a 3 to 4 week window in theaters, and then you can watch it at home. All right. So again, next week we got John's pick for Red Eye for the required viewing. But the guts, the meat of that episode is going to be Dune Part 2. I'm beyond excited. I can't wait to go to this press screening and see it on an IMAX screen. Hopefully, there's no technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But
Hope not.
review embargo is up, certified fresh, 97, 98%. People loving it. Comparisons to Empire, to Lord of the Rings, like massive, massive love for a possible sci-fi new classic. So I can't wait to see it and talk about it with you guys. But again, that'll be on next week's episode. Moviesmovie.com is the website. You can go there to check out past episodes, subscribe to the podcast. If you want to listen to the show on any podcast platform of your choice, and if you want to subscribe to the video option, you go to youtube.com/movie podcast and hit subscribe and hit that bell so you get notifications when the new videos come out. Otherwise, we'll talk next week. Again, Dune Part 2 coming soon. And as always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.